Welcome to the Evolution of Mom podcast. We are your hosts, Amy and Sharice, and we hope you enjoyed our last episode on watering your own grass and taking care of your own lawn. Today, we have a special episode with some special guests, Alan Lazaros and Emilia Smith. Alan is host of the Next Level University podcast, and Emilia Smith is the host of the WhyPower Podcast. So they're here to kind of help us talk about relationships.
Yes, these two are extremely powerful as individuals and together. They both do coaching. They both have had a huge impact on our life in multiple fields, business, helping me get into my feminine with Emilia. And we both have used them for relationship coaching, which has just been amazing. Your guys' relationship talks have been extremely valuable in both of our lives, which I think is something really powerful to say as someone who is married and also as someone who is single and in the dating world. So, I mean, we appreciate you guys so much and we are so excited to be here. And you guys have a world of talents, but we today are going to ask you to help us talk about relationships.
Do you want to share a little bit about your story and how you guys kind of like started in this like relationship coaching side of it?
Absolutely.
Ladies first, sweetie.
Thank you so much for having us. This is quite the honor. My heart's beating.
I know, I'm like a little bit excited.
I love relationships and I love talking about them. And I love being able to do what I love doing with my partner right next to me. And I think that that's something that as a woman, I've always aspired to do, especially someone who has big dreams, big goals, and who has experienced a lot of people telling me that that would never be possible. And so for just your listeners, I think that that's the first thing that I'll say. But then going into our story, I think a lot of it is large in part because Alan and I never settled for what other people would tell us is possible. And so just a little bit about my story. So that's where it started. I had been in several different relationships and tried to understand that the world was a series of relationships, you know, in and out of dating. I think everyone kind of goes through that first, that second, that third love, right? Or supposedly, right? And we learn a lot about ourselves. And so through my own experience with relationships, learning about myself, I really understood what I liked, what I didn't like, what I would tolerate, where my boundaries were, and who I was becoming. And I think that that was a large part of my story, was who was I becoming with this person? And did I like myself with whoever I was with, whether that be single or alone? And so large in part of how we got together, to not go totally down the sap road, was me choosing me first, getting out of relationships that were toxic and ones that were not good for me, and saying no to everything that was kind of tempting, and having the power and the reassurance that I would find my person and believe in myself so deeply so that I didn't settle and I just kept working towards my goals and who I aspired to be. And long and short, I ended up crossing paths with this guy, ironically, through his podcast. So initially I was attracted to the mind, because that to me is what mattered. And then I saw this guy and I was like, oh my goodness, he's such a hottie. Brains and beauty, right? So so much more involved with that. But here we are now doing what we love to do, helping people, serving, caring, and doing that together. So that's me a little bit.
So strong work, sweetie. I remember I had gotten out of a relationship, and it was not a great relationship from my perspective. There were some good things, but again, I didn't want to settle. I remember I got to the point where I was like, I either get to achieve my dreams or be with this person. And since it became an or instead of an and, I knew my answer. I chose my dreams. Thank goodness, because it then brought me to the girl of my dreams, the woman of my dreams. But Lonely Land happened after that. And in Lonely Land, which we'll talk about a little bit more in this episode, basically I decided, and I remember saying this to Kevin, I said, I am sick and tired of being the one with the biggest aspirations in my relationships. I want to be the bottleneck. I want to be the anchor. I want to be the one who's trying to fight to catch up, not the other way around. And future pacing here, I went in Lonely Land for a long time, worked on myself. I grinded really, really hard, worked probably, I don't want to say harder than I ever have because I've leveled up since then, but I would say that I basically traded in any of a pleasure-centered life. I mean, I remember people literally coming up to me in Panera saying, "Hey, we're closed now. You need to stop working," on a Friday night. Like, I would not spend time with anybody. I would just grind, all in on my mission and my dreams. And eventually I came across Emilia. I had a close friend named Bianca at the time, who is now her co-host of the WhyPower Podcast and her business partner. And she introduced me to this person, and she's like, "This person's unbelievable. She's so next level. You got to meet her." And she was saying the same. Bianca was saying the same thing to Emilia at the time. We started talking. She actually suggested an episode for our show, which used to be called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And it was selfishness versus selflessness and how to dance between those two extremes. Basically, how do you know when to put yourself first versus how do you know when to put others first? And how do you dance between those? The first and only time Kevin and I got off the mics and got in, I wouldn't say a fight, but we got in a pretty heated debate about like, dude, we can't post that. You don't understand her. You don't understand what she really wanted from this episode. And he now understands her and why he didn't understand that back then. But basically, it's interesting because we re-recorded it, posted it. I ended up sending it to her. And I didn't know at this point that it was going to be my person. But now in hindsight, it's so easy to connect the dots looking backwards of like, that's why I was so vehement and so on fire after that episode of like, dude, that's not what she asked for. You don't understand her. So anyways, fast forward. I did my research, as we do when you meet someone who intrigues you and who you feel called to. And that's the best way I can describe it is I felt called. I used to watch her real estate videos on Instagram, and I used to look at her photos, and I used to DM her here and there. And we had a few conversations. As a matter of fact, on our last anniversary, we actually went through them together, which was really cool. But anyways, so fast forward, I look on Facebook, I do my research, and it says in a relationship. And so I'm like, I don't want to be a home wrecker, but let's be honest, I did want to be. And so eventually I sent a DM, and then I deleted the DM. And then I sent a DM a couple months later, deleted the DM. A couple weeks later, I think. And then I did it again, deleted the DM. 3 times I sent it, courageous moment. And it was something along the lines of true or false, are you in a relationship? Kept deleting it. It's Friday night. I'm at Impact Fitness, which is the gym we go to now. And I'm just like, you know what, man? It's like a Friday night or something. I am sick and tired of deleting this message. I'm just going to send it. True or false, are you in a relationship? She responds and she says, yes, I am. A relationship with me. Okay. And that is the start. Okay.
Heck yes.
Committed.
Yeah.
Wow. Me
exactly.
first.
Yeah. And that will be the theme of this episode. But and all your listeners know at this point that I'm long-winded. She is too. We love deep talks. We love contemplative everything. We love deep thinking. Shallow thinking is for the birds. And so we just hit it off. I mean, at the time, she was actually watching The Lion King with Bianca. And we just audioed back and forth. We exchanged numbers and audioed back and forth. I mean, 20-minute audios. These are like podcast length level audios back and forth, like 3 or 4 a day, like to the point where our productivity was taking a hit of just like connecting on such a deep level. Go on a first date, second date. I mean, we've been genuinely inseparable ever since. And it's such a beautiful love story. But I think the takeaway is, number 1, don't settle. Number 2, lonely land sucks, but it's necessary. Because that's where you find yourself and when you decide to go all in on your calling and your mission. And along that mission, that's when you're going to feel the calling to reach out to your person. One tiny last piece before we move on here is I had to say no to many, many, many opportunities that were very intriguing. And I've talked to her about this, and I'll just be frank, some extremely attractive women. But I told myself, not only did I say I'm never going to settle, but I said, I'm no longer going to make my dating decisions based on sexual attractiveness. I'm not going to base it on the physical anymore. I'm going to go off of my intuition. I'm going to go off mental, emotional, and spiritual, not physical. Because most of my dating decisions, frankly, were physical. Very, very beautiful women, but I didn't necessarily connect on as deep of a level. And what's ironic and amazing is that I ended up with the most physically attractive woman ever, even though that wasn't what I was going for. Which is just so, so, so cool. So I'm the luckiest man in the world. That's basically the theme of the story.
Awesome story. Like, it's great to hear both of you guys and how you describe it. I mean, I have so many
I have
questions already,
so
but
many. Go for
I know we've talked about Lonely Land. I want to see if you guys can go into Lonely Land a little bit more, because it does suck. And for anybody who's in Lonely Land right now, like, it's a struggle. But yeah, I really like the way that you guys describe it and how you kind of have worked through it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
It's your framework, sweetie. Go ahead.
So yeah, I think I developed this framework, and Lonely Land is a pit stop. Imagine you're taking a journey. I think all of your listeners who are listening, it's an evolution. All of us are experiencing our own evolution, no matter where we are in the journey. We're trying to figure it out, right? And so relationships are no different. The relationship that we have with ourselves, the relationship that we have with our parents, our friends, our family. But when it comes to understanding where we belong, one of the fundamental things that we all have deeply rooted in us is, where do we belong? Where will we be loved? Where will we be accepted? And where will we be celebrated for who we choose to be, not who anyone else decides we are? And so Lonely Land is, like I said, one pit stop along the journey, wherein you, as someone who might be growing, aspiring for more, dreaming big on your personal development journey, you start in what we call old world. So this is, and Alan, you can go into maybe the nostalgia buckets and everything like that, but a lot of us start out kind of hanging out with old friends and really kind of kicking back, not really developing what our dreams are, having conversations that are pursuing the goals or the ambitions that you have. And so when you're on your development journey, you might feel a little bit alone when you start hanging out with your old friends from high school or from college, and you two might not be kind of on the same wavelength, right? You might not be relating to one another in terms of, oh, what did you do this weekend? Or what are you working towards? Or just some of the content of the conversations that you might be having, in your heart aren't aligned. And so as you start to kind of go along this journey, you find yourself in Lonely Land. And this Lonely Land is essentially what Alan referred to as grinding on you and who you aspire to be. And doing that is the most challenging part of your personal development journey, I believe, because what that requires of you is getting rid of, to some degree, of that which no longer serves you. Sometimes that can be people, sometimes that can be places, and sometimes that can be concept, ideas, belief, values, etc. And trying to figure out who you are, even when people don't love and support you for who that is and who you're becoming, is the scariest thing that a lot of us go through. Why? Because we crave social belonging and acceptance so deeply.
Mm-hmm. Strong work, sweetheart. The only thing that I would add to that about Lonely Land is a couple things. Number one, when you do decide to embark on your growth journey, the old person's, places, things, and ideas need to be given up. I often say you have to give up to grow up.
Yeah.
And this is the part that really does kind of suck. Because, like, okay, a fitness journey, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You decide to go all in on, for me, I traded the label of alcoholic in for bodybuilder, and I started to be a bodybuilder. And so I stopped drinking. I quit drinking. And therefore, I quit spending time with all of my friends that drank, because that was a trigger for me. And I started going all in on fitness. I was a fitness competitor, fitness coach, blah, blah, blah. I had to say no to those old persons, places, things, and ideas. And I had to say yes to fitness. And that gap of Lonely Land, when I didn't really have any new fitness friends, but I also didn't want to go back to the friends who weren't into fitness. You're a bodybuilder now, right? You're a podcaster now, all that stuff. And so anyone who's ever embarked on a personal development journey and they really got the bug of, like, I'm going to never stop improving for the rest of my life, they kind of wake up and they have to, it's almost like I no longer fit in over there.
Yeah.
You can spend time. So for me, whether it's high school friends or college friends or colleagues from corporate, it's just like, I don't really fit in over there anymore, but yet I kind of don't fit in with the Tony Robbins of the world yet either. And so I'm in this weird lukewarm middle where they don't really like the new me, but yet I'm not really enough of the new me to really fully fit in at the next level. And so our podcast, Next Level You, it's about the next level of you. We are all an amalgamation of the persons, places, things, and ideas that we surround ourselves with. And so if you want to change and you want to grow and you want to evolve, and if you want to find your dream partner, quite frankly, you have to become the person who can not only attract that, but can sustain a relationship with that. Emilia right now is 26 years old and I'm 32. And I can promise you this, that when I was 26, there's no way that I could have attracted the level of consciousness that she plays at. But me at 32, I can, and that's something that I can sustain. And so when you embark on that growth journey and when you go through Lonely Land and you find yourself, which by the way, in Lonely Land, that's the point of it.
Yeah.
You're alone, so you find yourself. You finally listen to that intuitive calling that you've always had, that you've kind of silenced with a bunch of noise. And so then what you do eventually is you find a coach or a mentor. This is what happens. So when you're in Lonely Land, one of two things happens. You either decide to go back to the old world because Lonely Land is too painful.
Yeah.
Or you decide to get a coach or a mentor at the next level so that you can finally start to learn how to fit in at that next level. And I highly recommend the second one. Very last thing I'll say before is basically in Lonely Land, this is where you trade in pleasure for fulfillment. Okay? I'll give you an extreme hardcore example, but it will make the point. Watching porn is not fulfilling. Never has been, never will be. Okay? Having sex with the love of your life is unbelievably fulfilling. It's also pleasurable. See, one of them is bad for you and bad for your fulfillment and your highest self. The other one is how to take pleasure and make it fulfilling. Lonely Land is going to tempt you. It's going to tempt you with all kinds of pleasure-seeking stuff. And if you can have the courage to say no, and you can sit and find fulfillment in your own higher self, I promise you, you'll attract that next level eventually. And that's the key word, is eventually.
Yeah. One thing I do just want to touch upon is the courage, because you ladies, have a tremendous amount of courage having to reach out and taking that next step in terms of your own personal development journeys, of reaching out for help when you needed it. A lot of people don't do that. And a lot, like, even for your listeners, when there is that, there are resources out there, because what happens, like Alan said, the pain gets so big in Lonely Land because either you don't have a partner, you don't have family that's really like, rah, 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 you're changing, we're so proud of you, right? Or you don't have friends that you can actually relate to. And so in our natural core, it's like, just love me for my growth journey, right? Like, can you just celebrate who I'm becoming? And everything will tempt you. Life will tempt you as you grow. That is inevitable. But as you evolve as a woman, even as a man, we all have, to some degree, if we do have goals and aspirations, a degree of responsibility to, we owe it to ourselves to have that courage to step forward and take another step into Lonely Land. Because hanging out, and this is Charisse, we had gone in depth with you, really what separates the people who can hang out in Lonely Land for the longest versus those who will go back to the old world are those who break through. And I have goosebumps right now. Like,
I did too. I got
a transformation. And it's so amazing because it's like shedding an old skin. And Charisse and Amy, you two have both done it in your own accord. Had you not stayed in Lonely Land and really borrowed some of that belief from the resources that you reached out to, like Alan and myself, how easy would it be to go back and get love where you can get love for, right? Being the old version, slipping into old vices, right? So like that courage part, I believe, is so inherently important for all of us to consider as we do feel our own degree of Lonely Land. And you two have, just want to commend you, done an extraordinary job at that, and are an inspiration for a lot of women out there. Because as women, and I can speak as a woman, but certainly not blanket everyone, that is the hardest thing to do, especially because there are a lot of women that don't want to see women succeed, break through, break the norm. And it's challenging, right? Like, let's be honest, as a woman, to do that in our own unique way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oh my goodness. So I mean, I think diving into Lonely Land in the mindset of this is a true form of self-care. It is. You can dive into Lonely Land with a mindset of this is my time for self-discovery, self-growth. Like you said, there's so many lessons here. And if you can turn down the distractions of what no longer serves you, it can be a really beautiful space and such a good time to find where your core values are. And then find pleasure from those core values. We're deep believers in fun and pleasure and doing those things for yourself. And when you can find pleasure in things that are aligned with you versus what isn't, it makes a huge difference because, like you said, that's fulfillment pleasure. That's so different compared to the superficial pleasure that maybe you're looking for to fill that void.
Exactly.
And so I think that's really beautiful.
I know one of the things that like really had me in Lonely Land, and we had talked about this, I think, at the very first relationship talk, and I had listened to your podcast, Emilia, on making a list and knowing like your core values and what it is that you were looking for in like what attractive qualities you wanted and your non-negotiables. And I think that is super important for anybody who's in Lonely Land, because that having that list there, it makes it clear as to what you're not settling for.
And I think it's important to point out that you can be in Lonely Land in a relationship.
Oh yeah.
Right. You can be
As
in
the
Lonely
relationship
Land in a
evolves.
relationship. Yes. As it evolves. Right. And sometimes all the time, most of the time, however you want to look at it, you're not evolving at the same level or at the same rate.
Right.
Right. It's typically a back and forth. And sometimes one gets way further ahead than the other. And there can be that time of what I would absolutely call Lonely Land until you can come back together. Right. I think it's very important to talk about and how you guys were so beautifully yourselves before you became the we together. You were the me's before the we's, right? And so dedicated to your best selves. And we can still do that when we're in a relationship as well. We can decide, you know what, it's time for my life to shift. It's time for my goals to shift, my values to grow, me to grow myself. And it can be a scary place when you're in a relationship, but it's still worth doing, because even anytime you can solidify your best versions of yourselves as individuals, it's going to create a stronger version of the we. And I know you guys have been a huge part of that for Chris and I.
Thank you for that. I think, Amy, to add on to that, part of being able to do that relates back to what Charisse had said about the list, right? The list that she's referring to is understanding what your standards are, what your relationship standards are. And those are very large in part built off of the values that you inherently have, as well as and simultaneously to your aspirations, who you aspire to be as a woman. That's one of the questions that I've prompted both of you to try to ask yourselves. Who do you aspire to be? Because that aspiration will help you get very clear on what it is that's important to you in a partner, but also what qualities are important for you to honor and take care of when you do attract a partner who is attracted to that type of woman or that type of man, right? And so understanding where your boundaries are, whether you're single or in a relationship, is so important. Why? Because if you have two people, whether it's you and you, right, or you and another person, right, you have limits or maybe you don't, and maybe that's something that you want to work on. But being able to communicate what those limits are, or those standards, or those lines, right? How often are we crossing our own lines in terms of, I thought I was going to go to the gym, right? This is something that I'm really good at doing, and I have to proactively work on every single day because I need to identify that it's a form of self-care and self-love. To take care of my body means to actively take conscious application of what care means for me, right? So if I can't get there in terms of what my standards, my values, my relationship is to myself, how can I possibly communicate that with another person?
Yes.
One more thing about core values as well. We inherently embody that which we value. And we also admire other people with those qualities. But we also evolve and we learn and we grow. And so, Amy, I just want to acknowledge you for the unbelievable distinction you just made about lonely land while in a relationship.
Yeah.
That was huge. If one person grows at an accelerated rate, that contrast will create a mini lonely land.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you did is reach out for a resource to help instead of, the alternative. And that's what closed the gap. And now you grow together and not apart.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge. That was a massive distinction. And I really appreciate you bringing that to the table. The only other thing I want to say about core values quickly, that's actually what in many ways saved my life. And when I say saved my life, DMing her was the single best decision I've ever made. Okay? Genuinely. And yeah, so but when I was in Lonely Land, I got very clear on my core values. Okay. So my ex and I had broken up and we were still hanging out for a while, and that was during Lonely Land. And so I kept going back to the old world. And again, nothing against her. In hindsight, we just were not aligned. We did not have similar core aspirations. We just didn't. We did not have similar core values. We just didn't. And we did not have similar core beliefs. I found out my values. I wrote them down. There's 6 of them. And I rated my past relationship from 0 to 10 on that. The numbers were not high. Again, I don't want to bash any of my exes. Okay. When I rated Emilia later on in life, after I'd found her, 12 out of 10 on all 6 of them. The 6 core values I could easily go through. One of them is personal development. One of them is natural health and fitness. One of them is massive dreams congruent with one's purpose. I'm telling you, 12 out of 10. It's obvious why we work. And I just, yes, we have challenging moments. And I want everyone out there listening right now to understand something. If you have core aspirations, core values, or core beliefs in conflict, it will cause friction.
Yeah.
Okay. The destiny you choose in advance, AKA the core aspirations, like she said, the woman you aspire to be. The moment you choose the woman you aspire to be or the man you aspire to be, every person, place, thing, or idea is either serving that purpose or bleeding that purpose, feeding you or bleeding you. And so if you aren't clear, if you're out there and you're not clear on who you are, you're not clear on who you're not clear on what you want yet, or what your core values are yet, or what your core beliefs are yet, if you're not clear on your purpose, the only wrong answer is not to search, not to do the inner work, not to get clear. We don't start out in life saying, I know who I am. No. We go explore and we figure out, I now know who I am not.
Yes.
Okay. I've done a lot of exploring, and so has she. Persons, places, things, and ideas. I found myself in some rooms that I now know I do not want to be in, but that's because I had the courage to explore. And so if you're out there and this all sounds kind of like too good to be true, it's not. It's a progression. I'm on chapter 32 of this life. She's on chapter 26 of this life. Whatever chapter you're on, I hope that the next chapter you're more clear than the last one. That's the goal. 1% better every single day, 1% more clear every single day, and you'll end up 30. I did the math out once. If you get 1% better for 600 days in a row, I did the math out, you'll be 384 times better. And the reason I did that math, just so people know, 600 episodes, when we hit 600 episodes of our podcast, I wanted to find out and calculate how much better we got at podcasting, assuming we got 1% better each time. But that's the main point here is you can get 1% more clear. If this all sounds overwhelming, don't let it overwhelm you. Just start small and get more and more clear. Go explore and then refocus on who you are.
Yeah. And adding to that really quickly too, Amy, what you had said about the relationship, like you can get 1% better in the relationship with yourself every single day. And so like what Alan's referencing too is like having the courage to stay quiet or to get quiet and get honest with yourself of what that is. I think a lot of people are afraid to admit what they truly want in the world, whether it be out of a partner, out of a relationship, out of a communication style, whether it be with your partner that you've been with 10 years, 20 years, or 3 months, like don't be too afraid to admit what you want. Why? Because that will set you on a different trajectory than what is destined for you. And so faith is super important. Like I believe so much that you have a greater purpose, and aligning everything closer to that is the journey of life. But bringing in those numbers, Alan rated me up against values. At first, to first sight, people might be like, what the heck? Why would you do that? I've realized how important numbers are when it does come to relationships. Think of just your goals from 0 to 10. How close do you feel like you're making progress to those? Even the people that you have relationships with, from 0 to 10, how aligned are they?
Mm-hmm.
From your current relationship that you're in, if you do happen to have a partner, how aligned is your communication to be able to allow you the growth that you aspire to have? All of those questions, you can get 1% better in everything that it is, whether that be the relationship that you have with yourself, the self-care, or the communication style that you have with your partner.
I truly believe that all of this is still a deep form of self-care and self-worthiness and self-love. And we know from personal experience and just all the women we interact with that a lot of women justify not doing this kind of thing as, I don't have time. It's not as important. How could I take that time for myself to grow myself, to do all of this when I have children, I have a partner, I have work, I have a business? And we're really trying to hit home for people that this is what allows all of that to be great in your life. That it is always going to be better when you are pouring into yourself this way and then have it ripple effect out into your relationships.
Relationships are such a big topic, and I know that we can continue on and on, but we have gone a lot. So I think we'll kind of like wrap it up there. I mean, I'm sure we'll have you guys back on again.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, you guys, for coming on and talking to us and giving us a little bit of a deeper dive into relationships. We truly, truly appreciate it. Yeah, I am so grateful that you guys were able to come on and do this. One takeaway for our people right now, whether you're in a relationship or not in a relationship.
One takeaway that I want to start giving to the world that I've given to this guy, and he said it blew his mind, and so I'll try it out here with your listeners, is that everything is a relationship. Everything. How you feel about yourself, what the hairstyle is that you have, everything has meaning, and our brains are constantly trying to think about what that meaning means to us. We assign that meaning. What relationships you have in your life, that is predicated on who you aspire to be. Sometimes you have to make the courageous moments, the courageous moves, the courageous conversations to make the relationships what you want. And I want to just empower all of your listeners with that ripple effect. Sometimes it starts with one step. It usually always does. It's not you're going to take bounds and leaps and everything. It's just that one commitment to yourself that you are worthy and you deserve this type of self-care. And that starts with the relationship with yourself.
Beautiful.
That actually came up when we were talking about my relationship with money. And I was like, oh, that's so true. Yeah. And then I started thinking about that in terms of everything. So the one takeaway for your listeners, whenever I'm asked that question, I can only ever give one real answer because I think for me, it's just the most important answer. I'll tell a very, very quick hypothetical story because this helps it land. But I think my only intention on this was to help change the trajectory of your listeners' lives forever. Okay, I'm not going to transform their entire life overnight, but one shift in trajectory can change everything. So here it is. There's a mother in the park with a 2-year-old son. She sees a friend and puts the 2-year-old son down in a sandbox really quickly. She's talking to her old friend. She's not paying attention. The son had just learned how to crawl. When I was a little baby, I used to get into knife cabinets and I used to like crawl all around and all that. So, but remember, this is hypothetical. This isn't about me. This did almost happen to me though. So anyways, the 2-year-old crawls into the street, hypothetical, gets hit by a car, killed. Okay, hypothetical. We all could argue all day about whether or not the mom should have been paying more attention. True. The friend could have been paying more attention. True. The driver definitely should have been paying more attention. True. But you know who? No one would ever argue, ever, that it was the kid's fault. Ever. Why? The answer why is that the 2-year-old was not aware that cars were dangerous. So the only answer I ever can give when I'm asked what's one main takeaway, the truth of the matter is, whether we did a good job on this or not, if you're listening, we raised your awareness to something that you had never thought about before. And with new awareness comes new responsibility. And with new responsibility, you must make new choices. All of you out there listening, your waistline, your bank account, your relationship, your self-esteem, your self-worth, your self-confidence is all a byproduct of the choices you have made up to this moment. The bad relationships I was in were a choice. The bad alcohol addiction I had was a choice. And when I became aware of it, I could make a new choice. So everyone out there, the only takeaway I have is life is about choices. You are the accumulated compound effect of the choices you've made up to this moment. And hopefully we raise your awareness so that you can make better choices. At the end of the day, let all people sweep their own porch and the whole world will be cleaner. Focusing on you is not selfish. It makes the world a better place. Do it more, do it better, and keep making positive choices.
It does. Thank you so much. Now, we know how much we have benefited from having both of you in our life, whether from podcast, business coaching, relationship talks, all of these beautiful things that you guys do. Where can everyone else find you?
Okay. Instagram. So at Lazaros, Lazaros 88 on Instagram. I think you just changed yours, sweetie, to something super long, by the way, which we'll talk about. Yeah. Hashtag business jeffing. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, reach out on Instagram. You can reach out on Facebook. Hopefully you guys can put this stuff in the show notes for people.
Yep, they will.
You can also go to nextleveluniverse.com. If you get a hold of either of us or either of our assistants, you'd be able to book a relationship talks. If you're listening, Sharice and Amy are amazing. Reach out to them. They can help you, and they can get you in contact with us.
Absolutely. And like Alan just said, I changed my my handle over to Miss Emilia May, MissEmiliaMae. And that might change because we got business Jeff over here and we are still 26 years old and growing. But with that being said, I also ask, jump over to the WhyPower podcast, because I think there's a couple, if not all, there's certainly different episodes that have resonated with you, Sharice, that might be beneficial. And I think that, ultimately listening to more episodes of this show is really, really important. So Instagram, Facebook, like Alan said, and hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, we actually have a website for the but stay tuned. We'll definitely share that with you in the show notes.
And if you want to book a relationship talks, reach out. And one more thing that I wanted to say, what was it? Oh, the episode, I don't know if it's episode 7, I want to say, for the musts, must nots, and negotiables list. If you're out there right now, whether you're with a partner or not, getting clear on your musts, must nots, and your negotiables will change your life. That episode, more than any other, I think has changed lives because that list is so critical. Yeah. That's it.
We just pulled out stats, and that is the highest hitter.
It absolutely,
I didn't even know that before this, by the way.
Such a good episode.
Thank you so much. This was an honor.
Thank you for joining us. As always, don't forget to put yourself first, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right. Self-care is selfless. We are so grateful to have you guys here. And honestly, having people in your corner like this are the best ways to grow in your self-care, in your self-love, and to expand your life. So thank you for being here. And as always, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Thank you.